Hi, second graders. This is Mrs. Douglas, and I'm going to show you the new writing topic for this week. If you go into the lesson plans for Monday, I'm going to show you up here. The writing topic is here. In your opinion, is exploring caves something that you would enjoy? And then here for the pre-write, you're going to make a T-chart using the information from the article, Exploring Caves. You can also use information from Caving Facts for Kids article or even the video Bugs of the Caves. So I'm going to show you Exploring Caves. Here's the article here. I'm going to go ahead and read it to you, and then I'm going to show you how I highlighted some key details and used it to create a T-chart of pros and cons for exploring caves. So remember, pros would be good things about exploring caves and cons would be bad things about exploring caves. So I'm going to go ahead and read the article to you. Do you think it would be fun to explore caves? Let's see if I can move this here for you. There are different names for this adventurous activity: potholing, caving, or spelunking. A scientist who studies caves is called a speleologist. These scientists study caves as well as the environment that surrounds them. Caves have been used throughout history as shelter for humans, for burials, and as religious sites too. Many ancient paintings and old treasures have been found in caves around the world. So if I look at that first paragraph, I might go ahead and highlight some ideas there that I can use in my T-chart. And I'll show you what I've highlighted after I read the next section. Caves don't actually start as caves. They form in rocks over millions of years. Caves can be formed in lots of different ways, including chemical actions, erosion from water or wind, tectonic and volcanic forces, microorganisms, and pressure. They are usually made when water runs over soft rock. The cave will get bigger and bigger over time. When the water flows to a new path, the cave is left dry. They can also be formed when hot lava melts and holes are formed. Sometimes the ceiling of a cave collapses, which leaves a massive room or cavern. Tidal waters along the coast can also create caves as the waves bash against the soft rock. Caves can often have cool passageways that are created by the rock eroding. Caves can be very deep. The next section is called What are stalactites and stalagmites? Have you ever heard of stalactites or stalagmites? They are interesting structures within a cave. Stalactites are found on the ceilings of caves. And then it goes on to explain a little bit more about those. I'm going to show you with my document camera the key details that I highlighted, and then I use them in my T-chart. So I'm going to go here to my document camera. And I'm going to show you here, this is the article that's already been highlighted here. So I went ahead and I circled potholing, caving, and spelunking because those are words used for exploring caves. So in your opinion writing, you might write, spelunking would be such a fun activity. I also highlighted that scientists can study the caves. They have been used throughout history for shelter, for burials, religious sites. So if you go into a cave, you might be able to see these things left behind from humans, like a burial site or religious site. Also, there are ancient paintings in some of the caves, and old treasures left behind by people can also be found inside of caves. So another word for that would be artifacts. So scientists might find artifacts inside of caves. Also, when you explore a cave, you're seeing things inside, or you're seeing the formation of a cave that took millions of years to form. So I highlighted that because I think that's an interesting thing that you can see when you explore a cave. And I also highlighted here down at the bottom that you might see a massive room or cavern inside some of these caves. Also, you might see some really cool or neat, interesting passageways that are created by the rock eroding inside of the caves. And then down at the bottom, I also highlighted that you might see stalactites or stalagmites, which are the interesting structures that are formed within some of the caves. And then on the second page of the article, there's some other things that I highlighted. So I'm going to go ahead and read you the second page of the article. Go ahead and escape here and go back to this one. So if you scroll down, it's the second page. So we ended with, on the first page, they are made from, and then it says, the constant dripping of mineral-rich water, which little by little leaves mineral deposits that harden on the ceilings. Stalagmites are found on the floor of a cave. They are created when water droplets full of minerals fall to the floor. Then they grow, sometimes very large, and often look like pillars. So here you see a photograph, and you can see the stalagmites are the ones on the bottom here. And then stalactites are the ones up top here. So they're very interesting. Again, it takes a long, long time for these to form, so that's something very interesting that you might see in some of these caves. So if I go a little further, it says stalactites and stalagmites sometimes join from the floor to the ceiling, but this can take a very, very long time. They will only grow about 2.5, that would be 2.5 centimeters every 100 years. So it takes a long, long time for these to form this big. And then if I go on to the next part of the article, it's who calls a cave home? Caves certainly aren't very easy to live in. They are cold, dark, and wet. So what creatures will you find within these marvels of nature? You'll find bats, cave crickets, cave spiders, bears, and ring-tailed cats. There's another creature called a troglobite that only lives in caves. They often have unique features such as no pigment or no coloring. That's what pigment is, coloring. No eyesight, or even no eyes because they didn't develop due to the extreme darkness. There are quite a few animals that make their homes there. Caves can be very cool places and great to explore. So I'm going to show you what I've highlighted on this second page of the article, and then I'll show you how I use these key details to put ideas into a T-chart for pros and cons of exploring caves. So on the second page of the article, I'm going to switch over to my document camera again. And make this a little bit bigger. And I'm going to go to the top here so you can see what I highlighted here. I highlighted this fact about how the stalactites and stalagmites grow, just as an example of how long it takes for these to form. So that might be something that's very interesting to see because it takes so long for these to form. And then for things that live in caves, I highlighted those, but I also highlighted that caves are cold, dark, and wet. So that might be a con to exploring caves. And then I highlighted the creatures that you find there: bats, cave crickets, spiders, bears, ring-tailed cats. And I also hided the information about the troglobite that only lives in caves. So you might find that that's very interesting, or you might find maybe that's kind of creepy. So I highlighted the interesting information about those creatures, that they don't have any coloring. So no pigment or coloring to them, no eyesight, they might not even have eyes. So that could be, again, a pro, something interesting and good about exploring caves. You might see those things, or you might think that's something creepy to see those troglobites. So I'm going to go ahead and show you. I'm going to make this a little bit smaller here. Take you back to my camera. That's the hard part about going back and forth to these document cameras. Sorry about that. Trying to make this over here. So I'm going to make the T-chart pros and cons for the opinion writing. So here I have a blank piece of paper. I'm going to go ahead and fold it in half. And then at the top, like we did for the last writing piece, at the top here is our topic, is exploring caves. And then I can do this, and I can come down here. And I'm actually going to switch to a pen because sometimes the document camera doesn't recognize the pencil marks and it's a little blurry. Let's see if I can move this about a bit again. Make this a little bit bigger. Okay, so over here I'm going to write pros. And remember, those are good things about exploring caves. And then on the other side, I'm going to write cons. Bad things about exploring caves. And then remember, I've highlighted key details. So I'm going to use these key details in both pages to create the T-chart. So I'm looking at that while I'm creating the T-chart here. So for pros, one of the first things in the article talked about the history that you might find in caves. So I'm going to write that scientists, or maybe even you, can learn history from exploring caves. And some examples of that they gave were ancient paintings you might find, and also artifacts or old treasures. They call them old treasures, but another word for that would be artifacts. So you could write artifacts instead of old treasures. And then another thing I wanted to show you real quick is that another word for exploring caves is spelunking is used a lot. So I'm going to write on the top of my T-chart here next to exploring caves, I'm going to write spelunking. So when you write your draft, you might use that word spelunking. Spelunking would be a great activity, or I don't think spelunking would be fun at all. Okay, so in the article, I highlighted some other things in that first paragraph. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to put some of those into my T-chart as well. So we already put in here that you could learn history. There's ancient paintings possibly, old treasures and artifacts. And if I go down a little bit further here, it talks about things you might learn about Earth history. So how the caves form. So that might be something that's very interesting. And it says that they form in rocks over millions of years. So it takes millions of years for caves to form. So I'm going to write that you can also see the changes, Earth's changes that have happened over millions of years. So I'm going to write, can see changes made to Earth. And underneath explaining that it takes millions of years. So I might just kind of put like dot, dot. It takes millions of years for them to form. And scientists might find a lot of interesting things that explain how caves are formed by just exploring them and how that happens over time, over millions of years. So if I go down towards the bottom of the first page, things that you might see might include big rooms or caverns, cool passageways that are created. And I'm going to go ahead and add that too, that you can see special caverns or passageways in some of these caves. Or passageways. And that might be very interesting for some people to see these things. And then it started to talk about the stalactites and stalagmites. So on the bottom of the first page of the article. So I'm going to write that. They're interesting structures that are found in caves. That would be another pro that you might consider, to be able to see these things. And I'm going to put a little explanation under here that they are interesting structures found in caves. And again, in your writing, you could even explain a little bit more about them if you wanted to from the article. So it explains how they're formed on the second page here. I didn't highlight any of that, but you can use that information in your draft. And it takes so long for them to form too, so that's what makes them so special and interesting. To see the stalactites or stalagmites, it takes a long, long time for them to form. So down here, it explains what you would find in a cave, and also that caves are cold, dark, and wet. So I'm going to put as my last pro down here in my T-chart. I'm still in my pros column. I'm going to add that you might see interesting creatures. And again, they said spiders, bats, and also maybe this creature seems interesting to you. If I go back to the article, the troglobite, and you could explain how interesting it is. That might be a pro, or that might be a con. So I'll show you how I might put that in the my list under cons. But see interesting creatures. Again, remember you want to give examples: bats, spiders, or might even just talk about the troglobite. Troglobites are only found in caves, so that makes it a really interesting creature. So let me go ahead and show you this a little bit here, that on this side are going to be the cons. And I'm going to put under here another line. My T chart probably should have been the T here and not under the other way. So not to confuse you, I'll go ahead and erase that. Okay, so for cons, excuse me, so we have from the article, again, on the second page, that caves are cold, dark, and wet. You might find bats, cave crickets, spiders. So this information I'm going to put in cons. So I'm going to put cold. Let me close this. Looks like I need to put that in. Cold, dark, wet. So that might be a con, something that's bad about exploring caves. And then I'm also going to put that you might see, I'm going to put creepy. If in your opinion you think that bats and spiders are creepy, you might put that as a con, that you might see creepy creatures. And again, I want to give the examples of, so I'm going to put creatures like spiders, comma, bats, bears. Maybe you don't want to run into bears, right? I'm going to put troglodyte. And if I use this troglodyte, if I use that in my writing, I might even explain what's so creepy about troglodytes from the article. They have maybe no eyes, no color. Okay, and then I'm going to show you another resource that I might use for some more cons. So I'm going to plug my computer in. So give me a minute here. So I'm going to go to our lesson plan again. And we just went to exploring caves. So I'm going to show you, I'm going to show you caving facts for kids. Okay, so this article here gives a lot of information about what you need to do to prepare for spelunking. So it says right here, spelunkers and their equipment, also calling it modern caving, that it's a hobby, it's something that people like to do, but scientists also do it. So there's a lot of ideas in this article. I'm not going to read it, but just looking at the photographs, I got some ideas for cons and maybe even for pros. See here, this is a big cavern. A nice big room. And then here, I noticed how muddy he is. So maybe that's a con. And then down here, he has to climb down in here and descend down into the cave. And it looks like a really tight space using the special equipment. So that might, excuse me, be a con. So I'm going to go back to my T chart and show you how I'm going to put that in. So I'm going to put that many caves have small spaces. And you have to crawl through those small spaces. And spelunkers, they definitely have to, you saw the helmets on them, they have to climb through these really tight spaces on their hands and knees. So maybe for you, that's something that you wouldn't want to do. So many caves have small spaces, and then underneath I'm just going to put have to crawl through. And then also I'm going to put that you might have to climb down using ropes. So you might have to climb down into the caves. Maybe you think that's fun and adventurous, so you might have that as a pro in your T chart. I'm just putting it in as a con. But again, if you're adventurous and you think that sounds fun, then you might put it in your pro column. And last, I noticed how muddy, so maybe that's a con. Getting really muddy maybe is something that you don't want to do. So this is our T chart, and in the next video, I'll show you how you can use the information to create a plan for your writing. So I'll see you again soon.